It's loading faster this time. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. If you can hear us, please type llama in the chat. This means we're officially live and with you. I believe we are, but just to double check, please type llama in the chat so that I know for sure you can hear us and you can see us. So sorry for the delay. Technology was not very happy with us today, but in any case, we are here and very excited to have you with us. My name is Noelia. I will be your host for today's demo. And I have with me Brian. He's amazing. I am so excited to see him work and in action, but I will let him introduce himself really quickly in a few moments. Before that, if you are a returning Llama family member with us, you know this is your opportunity to ask questions about Brian's process. We will have about 30 minutes for this demonstration. If you have a question, please type it in the chat and we will answer as many of them as possible. This is a demonstration of what Brian can do. So this is leading up to his mini workshop coming up in November, which we will talk about a little bit more as we get going. But without further ado, Brian, tell us a little bit about you and what are we doing today?
Hi everyone, my name is Brian Ramsey. I live in England, Darlington in the northeast of England. I've drawn since I was very small, all the time. Always used to get drawing pads and pens and stuff like that for Christmas and, all birthday gifts and things. So I've always drawn. Then when I grew up, I became an architectural technician. So I drew lots of buildings. And so I drew professionally rather than for fun. Occasionally, when I went on holiday, I would draw the odd cottage or gîte or cathedral or whatever we were seeing when we were on holiday. But maybe only one or two in a 2-week holiday. Then I got into drawing cars. I tried to join the Guild of Motoring Artists, but they rejected me, which was a huge disappointment. But nevertheless, their loss was everyone else's gain. And then about 2017, my daughter, I'd started sketching. So I'd been to watercolor classes, and then I went to life drawing classes. And there was a guy in a life drawing class, a guy called Andy Lamb, who's a photographer from the Northern Echo, which is the local paper. And Andy was an urban sketcher, and I didn't know what urban sketching was. But he introduced me to this idea of urban sketching. And I thought, that's quite good fun. So, I used to go out with a sketchbook, eventually plucked up the courage to put some drawings into my first Moleskine, which I'd had for 10 years before I started drawing in it. And then my daughter said, Dad, you should post these on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, Fran, I really don't do social media. She said, no, do it. So anyway, slowly but surely, the likes started to increase, the followers started to increase. And my father, he was always on at me to join. There's a couple of TV competitions in the UK for landscape artists and stuff like that. And he was always saying, Brian, you should enter. And I'm like, no, I'm not good enough. Anyway, I did this drawing of 3 or 4 boats at Stades, which is a village that clings to the coast of the North Sea in Yorkshire. And I did this drawing and I thought, well, that's quite nice. I like that. It was quite pared down, lots of lines in it, and very little colour. That's what I'm good at, not putting a lot of colour on. So I entered this and I actually got into the show. And spoiler alert, I won my heat and then went to the semi-final where I lost. But never mind, we'll gloss over that. And that was the start of things sort of like ballooning out and actually thinking, I can do this. And I can do it, more than just as a pastime, more than just irritating my wife when we go on holiday and she spends 2 hours looking around a cathedral and I stand or sit outside it and draw it. So she's seen a lot of cathedrals or the inside of cathedrals, and I've not. So that's it, really. That's where I'm going from now. So the premise for today's workshop, the demonstration, is it's a teaser for the mini workshop. Excuse me. The idea is a lot of people get hung up about, you give them a big piece of paper and they get this, it's almost like, the white coat syndrome. They see this big blank piece of paper and they can't actually commit pen or brush or whatever to paper. So quite often I use a lot of postcard size things. I don't know about anybody else, and I don't know if you can see. Can you just switch the camera briefly,
Yep,
Noah?
I will.
Yeah. So I don't know about anybody else, but I end up with lots of offcuts of watercolor paper. I'm not quite a Yorkshireman, but I'm very close to it, so I don't like to throw anything away. So I use all of these offcuts, even the tiniest ones. You know, they make little bookmarks or whatever, really. So I never throw any watercolor paper away. And the whole postcard thing, that's a sort of development of that, if you like. So, you know, with when I go out sketching, I don't know about anybody else, but, you know, you've got these lovely sketchbooks that you paid quite a lot of money for. Sometimes you feel a bit worried about actually putting stuff into them. So what I've kind of done is to develop this idea of having a warm-up. And I'll just show you an example. So this isn't the actual warm-up postcard that I did at a castle on the shores of Loch Ness, because there was a couple who were, I don't know if anybody else is when they're out, you know, they're drawn or whatever, but it always attracts attention. And people are always quite, you know, they're keen to talk and keen to have a little nosy at what you're doing. And I don't mind it. I thoroughly enjoy it. I like the interaction. So this couple came up and said, "Oh," and I just started to draw this. But I'd finished the postcard that I'd done before this one as the warm-up to putting stuff in the book. And I didn't have any business cards with me. Lord alone knows why I didn't have any business cards. But they cheekily said, "Well, just write your details on the back of the postcard." So I actually gave them the postcard. So that's why that one's gone. But this is the idea. So little postcards, then you sort of, you know, you get used to limbering up, if you like, you know, your mental acuity is set up and you're ready to rock and roll. And then I tend to do a couple of these and then start in my big sketchbook and draw something. And that's the kind of thing I produce. So you can see, you know, it's not, I don't like to cover the whole page in paint or pen or whatever. You know, it's quite economical in its application of line and its application of paint. But the idea is that the postcards, you know, they give you that ability to warm up and also to think about composition. So, you know, that drawing there could actually theoretically be 4 or 5 postcards. And this is the thing that I'll be showing in the mini workshop, is the idea of starting off with small pieces like this, but you can curate your own collection of things. So you can end up with 5 or 6 postcards where you've not expended hours and hours of time to then make a mess of it right at the end and lose all the work that you've done. These things, you know, should take only really 30 minutes tops. You know, I'll show, hopefully get through 2 today, but I'll be painting very fast and probably, you know, stuff will run, but that's beside the point. You know, it's fast and loose. It's get it down. Don't worry about it. Loosen yourself up. Free yourself up not to worry about things. So that's the plan.
Awesome. Shall we get started with the first one then?
I've talked too much already, Noelle.
It was a great explanation, though. I'm just excited to actually see all the thoughts into work on action.
Yeah, and it's in an extra sketchbook as well.
All
about
it.
Okay, so I think everybody should be able to see the reference photographs. My brother is lucky enough to have a house on Tyree, which is one of the Western Isles, a tiny little island, incredibly flat. It's essentially a large aircraft carrier that doesn't go anywhere. But it has all of these, I don't know if you can see those, you can, yeah. Has all these traditional black houses, which are essentially really thick walls, white rendered, and then they've got these rounded roofs so that the snow doesn't sit on them or whatever. And they're all sort of clad in roofing felt and painted with black pitch tar, if you prefer. So they're characteristic of pretty much the vernacular for the whole of the Western Isles, but certainly on Tyree. And my brother's got one of these. So a couple of years ago, we went over there, and it's got to be seen to be believed. You know, the color of the water and the sky and everything else when it's not raining or blowing a hooligan. So what we're going to do is we'll start off with this one first. So this is the little bothy by a guy who's got quite a lot of land on the island, and he sits in there and, he's got a little wood burner, and he sits and reads books and smokes his pipe, I think, with a fantastic view of the inlet there. These are Etcher's 100% cotton postcards. They're lovely, really nice to draw and to paint on. So we're just going to start with this one. So there's the card. This is the pen I use on a regular basis. So it's a uni pen. It's a 0.1 and it's dark grey. I like the dark grey because they're not as well, they're not as black as the black ones, and they're darker than the light ones, the light grey. They only come in two sizes or two thicknesses, which is the 0.1 and the 0.5. I put the masking tape on to show that this is a brand new pen that hasn't been used and hasn't been destroyed by my quite heavy hand. So you see there, that's a new pen. So this is a pen that I've used already. And basically what I'm going to do now is just show you how I put things down. So a lot of drawing, it's not trying to copy someone else's style. Your drawing is just like your handwriting. Everybody's handwriting is different. Everyone's drawing is different. So there's no way, there's no need for you to try and emulate what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do is to show you the spirit of what to do. The perceived wisdom is to draw from the outside in. So you draw from whatever's on the outside into the center of the paper or the subject. I have to say I'm the world's worst at doing that. So I tend to start somewhere completely random. And what I'm going to start with is this rocky outcrop that you can see here. It's an igneous or volcanic rock. So it comes in columns and striations, and it's quite good to draw. You can see it's essentially at a 45-degree angle there. So what I'm doing is just drawing that in to get that set, and then that sort of sets me up for the rest of the drawing. So I'm just going to put that in, and that's that rock formation essentially in there.
Would you be able to zoom in a little bit on it?
Sorry, yeah, I will. I'll just move the camera down.
Awesome.
How's that?
Much better, thank you. And quick question, are you using the cold press or hot press postcards?
These are the cold press ones, so there's a slight texture to them. Yes, they do. They do come in two different ones, don't they? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the cold press. There is a texture to it. I quite like using. Some people don't like using hot press because it's too smooth. I quite like using the smooth sometimes, just as a change. Right. So that is that rocky outcrop sliding down to the gentle hillside, and then if you look in the reference photographs, you can see the art of the lines in the landscape. I like to look for the lines, and I'm always looking for those, to put those in and to give it a bit of interest, basically. So I've put that line in across there, and there's a little sort of tufty bit of grass, which I'm just going to pick up there as well. And then you can see at the base of the rocky outcrop, there's a line of, I don't know whether it was marshy land, I can't remember now, but I'm just going to put that in there as well, and then bring that straight down. And I'm not, this isn't a geology or a geography diagram. It's meant to be a piece that, so you don't have to be slavish to what's there. You can exaggerate things to your heart's content, really. And then we've got, so that there's a ridge line right across the center of the page there. And I'm going to make sure I put that in at a place where it's not going to conflict with the rocky outcrop. So I'm putting it in there, probably slightly lower. And then I'm just going to draw the bothy. So this is quite simple. It's essentially an elevation at the range we're at. You can see just the slight gable end of that roof there. And I'm going to pop the chimney on there. And at this scale, there's not a lot of great deal of detail there. I'll just pick out a couple of stones in there, possibly. And I'll put the Velux windows in, the roof lights, just so they break up that roofscape. And I've slightly exaggerated those to give you a little bit of an indication of perspective. Probably just badly drawn, really. And then the far distance, you've got the other side of that inlet. And you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses on that side. Now, if I drew those where they actually are, they'd probably, they'd come into conflict with the bothy and probably take too much away from the bothy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of, my human Photoshop, is just draw that line in way above where it actually is, and not be too concerned about the accuracy there, and just bring that in. You can see it's a relatively small swathe of lines you can see, and I'm just going to put in some of those white houses. And that's the drawing done for me.
Wow.
What did that take? I don't know. So what I'm going to do now is to draw the. Should I draw the other one, or should I colour that in, Noelia? What do you
Can
think?
we color this one in just in case so that we don't run out of time?
Yeah. I think we'd rather do one properly than two not at all.
Yeah.
So this is my regular colour palette. We're not going to use all of those colours today. This is one that I took from Instagram. There's a lady on Instagram called Liz Steele, and Liz has done a lot of work on colour theory and developing palettes for expeditions and things like that. And she's put an awful lot of work into that. And she posted it all on Instagram. She's quite happy to share. She's got a great website as well. So I use Liz's colour palette with a couple of minor modifications. My minor modifications being this green here. She uses sap green, which I'm not a big fan of, but I love green gold from Daniel Smith's. And my new favourite colour after quinacridone gold, which is this one here, and you can see how much of that I use all the time, is this Daniel Smith's Moon Glow. So I've added that into the palette at the expense of some indigo, which went in that top corner. So there, all the darker colours are pinned over this side. So that's my colour palette there. You can see which ones I use on a regular basis and which ones I don't use quite so often, albeit they're full-size pans. So in terms of putting the paint down, lots of water, lots of pigment normally, but obviously with postcards, there's not actually that much to colour in. So you notice I say colour in rather than paint, because I don't claim to be any great painter by any stretch. So grab a relatively small but medium-sized brush, I suppose. Obviously, the thing to do generally with watercolour is to put the lighter colours in first and go to dark. So I'm just mixing up some Hansa yellow and a lemon, which I can't remember the name of. I think I listed them all out. And I'm just going to run that across that back line there as a starter for 10.
And what do you consider a small, medium-ish brush, like a 4-6 maybe?
This is actually a 6, Noelia.
Okay.
They're obviously brand new. They've got fantastic points on them. So, you can almost use these like a pen. I never used to look after brushes, but now I do because I can see the value. So that's just a flat wash that's been laid down. And then the next wash I'm going to put on is just a green gold, Daniel Smith's green gold. I've just dropped it into, can you see me mixing on the palette? You can, can't you?
Yep.
Just drop that onto that yellow that I was using before, not being particularly precious about it. And I'll put that in, and then I'll just lay that down.
So you're allowing your colors to be fairly bright compared than what they are on your reference.
The undercolors I leave bright. Occasionally I'll go back in. I'm not a big shadow guy. I leave that, like everybody knows John Harrison, I presume, but John's a great guy at putting shadows in, way better than I am. He's just a better painter than me all around, to be honest. But he thinks about his painting, and I just tend to I always think of it as tinting things rather than painting things, but it seems effective anyway.
He's actually watching the demo.
Then put some other stuff in. I'll colour in the shapes that I've created with the lines as well. So you can see that one rushing across there. But I don't think I want to paint any more of the green than that. The The next colour that needs to go in is the sea. The sea on Tyree, or around Tyree, sorry, more accurately. It's fantastic. It's a great colour. So I use, quite often I use this cobalt turquoise light from, it's not the Daniel Smith, it's actually Winsor and Newton. And it seems to be a great colour for the seas around Tyree and the Western Isles.
Oh, that does look lovely. By the way, John Harrison is actually watching your demonstration, and he's blushing, he said.
Right, so that's that colour there. I might actually just strengthen that a little bit with, oh, probably too much. I don't know. Right, so, and then the only big swathe of colour that I add next is the sky. I'm going to go with cerulean blue. And, you know, you could be doing 4 of these. If you're doing 4 of these and they're all the same subject, you could actually do 4 seasons with your 4 postcards, you know, and put some dramatic skies in. And just, you know, the same subject in 4 different ways can be quite effective sometimes. I quite like to go wet on wet with the sky.
Is there a particular reason why?
Just because I get the happy accidents from the water. You know, it does something that I could never intend it to do, to be honest, no idea. So I'll just drop, you see how that
wow
thing?
Yes.
You know, that's no skill on my part. That's just, well, it's not even chemistry. I don't know what it is. It's just water doing its thing, and watercolor. And that's the beauty. Obviously, I'm doing this quite fast, so there may be some bleeds into some of the other colors I've laid down, but I'm not that bothered, to be honest.
Well, I think it blends in with the style of the sky anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it, you know, and if it is a mistake, if it goes horribly wrong, what's gone horribly wrong in 10 minutes that we spent doing this? Absolutely nothing. You know, you've not spent a great fortune on paint. You've got a tiny little bit of watercolor paper. You know, it's not the end of the world by any stretch.
True.
No, I'm not going to put a dark color in. I'm going to leave that sky as it is. So that really needs to dry before the next thing to put in would be the roof of the bothy, which is obviously, you know, I'd be using a dark or possibly even a black that I mix up myself. But if I put that in right now, it will probably bleed into the sea and we'll lose anything. So what I might do is just actually just show you. So then with the land, you can see the variation in the color of the grass and the marshy bits. So I think if I just, can you see me mixing this? So I'm going in with.
If you could move it a little bit, yeah.
How's that?
Perfect. Beautiful.
So I'm just going to put in some of my favorite color and John's favorite color, which is quinacridone, and I'm just going to put that in there, just where you can see the variation in the hillside and the grass, and just run that in just to give a bit of interest and variation to it. And then probably go in with a mix of the green gold and undersea green, which is, it's a great ready-made color from Daniel Smith's, which I can never recreate with mixing greens. I struggle mixing greens. Don't know if everybody else does, but finding the Daniel Smith's greens was a real revelation for me. Finding Daniel Smith colors full stop was just one of the best things. If you're allowed to have a best thing when it comes to finding paints, it sounds a bit sad, I know, but never mind.
I could agree with that.
Of those 2 colors on the top of that green gold, you've got all of a sudden a bit of variation in it, and you've not, again, you've not expended a lot of time and energy on getting to that stage.
And it looks so much more alive now.
Yeah, and that's I think that comes across. The whole point with watercolor, I think, is to keep it vibrant and keep it lively. If you start to play with it too much, then you've just completely overworked something, and it loses all of that immediacy. I'm not saying that everything has to be like this, but this is just if you're limbering up for something bigger, it's a good way to just free your mind, get your mind set for what you're going to do, get your arm moving, get your hand working, get your eyes working. That's the big thing. Everything that we do with art, if we didn't, it's all down to how we look at things and how we watch and look at what we're actually painting or drawing. And that's the key to it for me. So that one, I'm looking at the rocks now. I've done this, I've painted this scene, I don't know how many times now, not quite as many times as Lindisfarne Castle, but I've painted it a few times. And I quite like the contrast between the rocks and the grassy bits with that white. It just leaps out more. They're not white, they're grey, but if I painted them grey, I could put some shadows in there, I could mess about with it. At the moment, that's obviously still wet, and if I did that, it would just bleed into it. So I'm not inclined to do it, and I quite like the contrast between the two. What I would like to do is to just paint the roof of the bothy, but I'm not sure how dry that is.
Are you drying it on purpose now?
I'm artificially drying it, Noelia. Ordinarily, I wouldn't, okay? I don't like to dry it with a heat gun because I think that does something to the paint. I have done it when I've been in a hurry, but I'm going to risk putting in the bothy roof, and I'm going to go with a slightly smaller brush. So I've gone with a 3. Okay. These brushes are lovely, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So what I like to do with blacks, I do have a set of monochrome paints which are fantastic, but I tend to use those just on their own. Occasionally mix them with a very strong highlight color, but when I'm doing blacks or darks, I like to mix a dark. I don't tend to use Payne's grey. So what I'll do is I'll take a Prussian or a French ultramarine, and then mix that with a raw sienna or transparent, what's its name? I can't remember. Again, it's listed. So that's there. A bit more blue in there. And you can see that's going black now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. So that's gone a much darker grey now. That just a bit more blue in it. Yeah, there we go. So I prefer mixing these blacks and greys because they have this tendency to separate. When you put them down, you get a lot of variation, texture that you wouldn't ordinarily get if you just put a lamp black or something similar down. That's quite wet, so I'll just take a bit of the water off there. There's even a bit of the green that was in there before as well. I'm not a great fan of cleaning palettes, just because I don't think we should.
How come?
I think people get hung up about their palettes being clean, but you think about how much. After having said I'm not a Yorkshireman, I've just demonstrated how tight I am with paper, and it's the same with paint. There's a lot of paint in there. If you see that, these little corners have got some great colours in that you would never ever. You don't know what's there until you actually find it, and then you think, oh, that's fantastic. So I don't like to waste paint.
Okay.
But
I can definitely agree with you.
Look at that. You see there's a fantastic brown that's just appeared in there, which sort of purpley brown. So this black, by the way, or this dark grey, if you added some quinacridone rose into that, you get a great shadow colour, which I used to call plum, but John Harrison renamed it last week and called it claret because he knows I have a propensity for red wine. So that's my new name for my shadow colour, claret, and that's quite good as well. But we don't need it today. Normally a bit more purple than that. It's actually the same one as that one. There you go. Right, so that one, need to do something on that back edge. So I might actually use that plum that I've made, possibly with a little bit of green in it. I'm just going to run that across there and try and leave a suggestion of a beach line, which probably isn't there, but I'm putting it in. I'm just going to run that across there.
Wow, that looks lovely.
Right, so that for me is pretty much done, Noelia. And
Okay.
if I mess out with it too much, it would just lose its vibrancy, I think. So I'm going to stop with that one. How long have I got left?
We have only about like 5-ish minutes, and we actually have a few questions that came
So
through, if
can
you
I
don't
do
mind
another one?
answering those.
Stop now and just show them this as an even more teasing for the mini workshop.
Sure, that works too.
Answer questions.
Yeah.
Cool.
By the way, we have comments in the chat saying that before you started adding all the other greens that said, looks fantastic already. Another one saying, holy cow, amazing, Brian. And that you make it look so easy.
Well, so that's the whole idea, to make it easy. You know, what I don't want is for people to get all angsty about it. And if I can show you how easy it is to do it with very little line or few lines and not a lot of paint, you know, then it's something to have a go at. And yours won't look the same as mine, but it doesn't have to. That's the whole point. You know, you put your own stamp on something.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Okay, so I
Are we switching?
have, yep, I'll remove the spotlight so that we can see you again. Awesome.
Cool.
We have a question about your palette. Sarah is wondering if you have a personalized way of organizing your paints by colors. They don't seem to be in a rainbow type of order, they say.
So, when I was much younger, I had an art teacher, Harry Lynch, who was a great guy. And Harry gave me my first sort of watercolor palette of what I was using, and it went from Prussian blue down to raw sienna. And if you mix those two colors, you get black. And if you come inbound all the way into the center, you go from darkest colors to the lightest colors. And that was the palette I used for many, many years. And I've still got that palette on my big studio palette, which is incredibly messy. That's the color palette that I've got in there. But this palette that I've got now, the Liz Steele one, I basically put everything in as I could make it fit. And then I wrote everything down. I've done a little drawing, which sounds really sad, but I've done a drawing of my palette with the colors in, so like a color swatch, and then I've labeled them. And then it took me probably about 6 months to remember what's where. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to have any kind of organization as long as you know which colors are which. I can't remember all of them, as I've obviously ably demonstrated, but the ones that I use all the time, I know where they are, and I know what the other ones do if I need to use them. So the Van Dyke Brown is there waiting to be dark and moody, and Quinacridone is there just to be my best friend.
I love how you talk about them. And it reminds me of a comment someone said that they were introduced to the green gold after watching John's live demo with us, and cobalt turquoise from a live demo with Susan Knapp, and now they need to check out Moonglow from your demo.
That's great. I wish I could
Awesome.
have responsibility for green glow, but no, John had that first. But moon glow, I actually, so John and I went out. We went to a place not far from here called Brimham Rocks, and one of the other guys. So we went out. It was a sort of rural sketch crawl. It wasn't an urban sketch crawl. It was a rural sketch crawl, and a bunch of us rocked up. And one of the guys, Graham, had this moon glow which I hadn't heard of before, and he actually gave me a little bit. So I don't know if you can see, at the risk of putting paint everywhere, you see this mixing part here, this a little bit here. You put a little bit of moon glow in there for me. Now, obviously, there's about £5 worth there from Daniel Smith. So I didn't get rid of that, even though I've got a whole half pan of it now, because waste not, want not.
Awesome. Okay,
Lovely.
my last question for you is if you could remind us what you're doing in your mini workshop and what should people expect from it?
So the mini workshop, this was just a teaser for that. Hopefully, although I obviously talk too much and not doing enough drawing and painting, the idea was to do 5 Tyree postcards, 2 of which have essentially the same subject, but they're from different viewpoints. There's different compositions there. And it's just to show people how you could do these cards very quickly. So it's more than just a limber up exercise. It's actually a way of creating a small collection straight off the bat, which you could then, theoretically, you could get those printed for cards or postcards or, whatever you wanted to do. So you're allowing yourself to use these exercises as something that can actually be quite profitable and fruitful afterwards. But it's also a precursor to what I'd like to do. If I get the chance to do a masterclass, is to show how this, can then lead on to a big panorama. If you section that panorama and think of it as a series of postcards, then you don't get hung up about this big piece of paper that you've got. You actually apply the principles of your limber up exercises and your postcards to develop a much bigger piece. And, then you're into the decisions you make about where do you colour? Do you colour the whole lot or do you just colour one postcard sized element to it? So hopefully that will be something that I get to do just before.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
brilliant.
Perfect. So basically, during the mini workshop, you learn how to make different postcards with different references, different angles, different moods.
But the principle still applies. So you're still putting, loose lines down. And because you're doing those very quickly and together, hopefully it's almost like you've curated that piece. So the 5 will have a consistency and a tie-in, even though they're essentially different subjects on the same island, or different, if that was castles in Northumberland, they'd still be different subjects, but they'd have that tie-in. And because you've drawn them very close together in an hour or an hour and a half, if you're really, really slow, they've got that continuity and consistency about them. So that's
Yeah.
the plan.
Awesome. I am thrilled, so excited for it. It will be happening on November 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's a Monday. So don't forget to grab your seats. I have dropped the link to it in the chat, and I will once more. And thank you, Brian. This was amazing. We have comments in the chat saying, great demo. They will definitely be signing up for the mini workshop, and I see a lot of thank yous coming in already.
I'm sorry about the problems we had with the tech kids. I knew it would all go wrong.
Tech today was not on our side, but hey, we made it here
Yeah.
and we had an awesome demonstration. So thank you. And thank you to all of you in our Llama family and everyone else who joined us today for this demonstration. We are always happy to have you. And if you don't mind taking about 30 seconds to a minute of your time, we really appreciate your feedback. So if you could tell us what you thought about this demo, that really helps us make sure we can continue to bring you artists that you enjoy and more content that you will enjoy. And we'll see you in John's mini workshop in November and in future live demos. Awesome. Thank you, Brian, again. Sorry, I meant Brian. I'm getting confused because John is still here
It's
in the
all right.
chat.
Everywhere I go, he's there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all, and we will see you in the next one.
Brilliant.